Here we are with Ruben Cabajal, the author of the Gifted program.
I was in a gifted program from kindergarten to 8th grade. So I was with the same group of kids growing up, and it was a very rarefied, it's a beautiful environment. I mean, we had small class sizes. We could do whatever we wanted. We had a lot of freedom. You would get an assignment, and if you didn't like it, you could pitch a different assignment.
Because I went to a Catholic high school that fed from all these parish middle schools and primary schools, like what Catholic middle school you went to really determined what clique you'd be in when you got into high school. So all of that was very predetermined, largely by class and then also by race. So that was just something that was always very much on the radar, like you hung out with certain people and you didn't hang out with other people, and it was all sort of determined by that. And then our high school was also right next door to an all-black public high school, so there was all sorts of racial tension between the two schools.
Social life was really set up by kind of the stereotypical friend groups you might imagine. I went to a big public high school, and there were the jocks, and the jocks never talked to the geeks, and the geeks didn't talk to the potheads, and the potheads didn't talk to like the heavy metal people. We called them Hessians. So having social activities meant that we were really sort of segregated off into these groups.
Her boyfriend Shawhan, she likes to be in control of him, but then she also really likes Joey, who is part of the Dungeons and Dragons club and stuff, and Joey's kind of like fascinated by her. So he's just like, ooh, Brenda, and then so Brenda likes to be in control of both Shawhan and Joey, and yeah, it's just really interesting to see.
Well, so she's sort of the newly made, not necessarily made, but the newly blossomed popular cheerleader character. So she's sort of the stereotypical, I'm just so popular, but she's a little bit sort of nicer than the more not very nice people.
Well, the classic example of that is the Breakfast Club, where there's like the jocks, the freaks, the cheerleaders. There was a sense of clique. The popular kids and the gamers or something like that. There was a sense of cliques. It was never quite as defined as it was in the Breakfast Club, but there was a sense that there were the popular cool kids, and then there were the various outsiders.
Yeah, well, certainly Breakfast Club, as I mentioned, sort of seemed to be, and it was all about social cliques. It was all about, oh wow, we're all human beings, we're kind of cool, we can get along, and the jock and the kind of snobby girl can kind of find common ground. I had this sense that it kind of, I liked it in a sense because it put all that in there, but it kind of played with it. It wasn't taking it all that seriously somehow.
Actually, it had a profound impact on a lot of us that saw it during that time. I think just because of the bringing light to the awareness of everybody's differences and that concept of cliques, like I was talking about, how interests kind of created that connection with people. And there you had this group of kids that were from lots of different so-called cliques or groups come together and have to bond around their differences.
One of the things that I've often told people when they've asked me, or students over the years or friends, we'd start talking about the 80s. I really feel like my high school experience was a lot like Fast Times at Ridgemont High or The Breakfast Club. Both of these fit pretty well. All those kind of 80s movies had some of these crazy stereotypes in them, and they're built on little bits of truth, actually, I think.
So she sort of goes through that, going from the complete bottom of the hierarchy, nobody knows her, she's nobody friends, to this complete hype. And it's sort of, I feel, she loves it. She's just in love with being in the limelight, but at the same time you can sense a little bit that she's not sure about what's going on. Like, she sort of puts on that whole air.
All my other friends kind of fell into cliques over the summer. I don't know what I did that summer, but I got left behind. And so I remember just like the first couple of weeks, I didn't know, I was sitting by myself and everyone was in these separate cliques, and I just felt completely lost.
At the top were the beautiful people that were straight, and who were wealthy, and the football players and the cheerleaders. That was like that was the highest sort of ranks, and that was the sort of the celebrities of the group.
Well, basically my whole circle of friends is just made up of the really, really unpopular kids. Like, basically all our social life revolves around Dungeons and Dragons. We don't really have much else. So we really are at the bottom of the social chain. And, I'm told many times by even the other characters in the Dungeons and Dragons group that I'm even at the bottom of them. And so, obviously I'm really unpopular and yet still in love with the most popular girl in the school, which means I try to get closer to her and end up interacting with people who just can treat me with trash and not really have any consequences.
It was interesting because I went to a small boarding school and the majority of us all lived there. I think bullying took on a lot of different faces because we weren't just arriving and being together for a short period of time. We had to really get to know each other. We had roommates. We were eating dinner or 3 meals a day together. So I think there were very subtle nuances of bullying, but there was so much community building that went on because we all lived, 200 girls living in the same spot. Theater kids were the theater kids and the athletes were the athletes, and we had a lot of students from New York City who had grown up in the urban huge city of New York. So there were cliques of different demographics.
Yeah, I would say that as we made our way through high school, you were able more and more to transcend cliques. Like in 9th grade, you were cast. You were in or out of a particular clique, and there wasn't really any crossover, or it didn't seem like it. Mostly it's because you're an awkward 9th grader and you really don't know how to assimilate or socialize, or you're just sort of learning those things.
And he has been a part of that club for about 6 years and is getting tired of being there, and he wants to move on because he feels like he's not the person he wants to be. So he starts wearing all these punk clothes and ripped jeans and mascara to kind of change his image.
And I was bullied in school, and I bullied kids when I kind of was younger. I was like in 8th grade, I was kind of a bully. One of my best friends, when I was a senior, he was a freshman, and we kind of hung out. And then one day he realized, he was like, wait a minute, you used to bully me.
Huh.
It used to be that schools could get away with hazing. Today we would call hazing bullying. And I think that hazing was just a natural part of being a kid in school in the 80s.
They always seemed to come from the the jocks, I guess, for lack of a better description. The sports players who thought they were pretty important, special, and would throw their weight around because of their perceived stature in the school, that kind of stuff.
I remember one moment in my 9th grade year, actually when the school was still new to me and I didn't know very many people. I remember one moment sort of opening my locker to try to get something out, and some guy I didn't even know kind of just jacked me up against the locker. And he didn't really even say anything to me. It's like, what are you doing? What's this all about? And then he kind of let me go. Maybe I was in his way, or he didn't like the look of me or something.
So Coach Whitelaw is this middle-aged man who is basically the meanest guy you ever probably have known. In a sense, he just kind of hates people, and essentially, and that's kind of his big part in the play, is that he basically progresses it along with punishments and not being nice guy, and kind of the one true bad main bad person in the play.
High school is lame. People were mean. We were all kind of mean to each other at different times, and we regret it. I wasn't like in the coolest group, but I had like some social clout over other kids, and I didn't always use that as humanely as I should have. I was kind of mean probably to some kids at different times.
Pretty much in the play, he's all about trying to get everyone to play the game, and that's his main objective. Is he just wants to keep the game together, and he also has a physical disability, so that's something that weighs in on his thoughts a lot, I think. You know, Bill comes across as really angry a lot. He's really angry about a lot of things. He's a really short temper, and he's really bossy and trying to control people. But I think underneath all of that, there's an insecurity about his height.
He wants respect from D&D crew that he's in, so like he kind of act bossy, or he just wants to make fun of the others, and he thinks like he's so much better than the others. So he tends to be kind of arrogant at some point.
The neighborhood I grew up in was super tough, and there was this survival of the fittest. It was, you had to be mean. I was sort of a mean kid, a little kid growing up, and that carried over definitely into middle school. You were either gonna get eaten alive or you were gonna eat someone alive, sort of thing.
She's like the guardian or the soldier of the social hierarchy. She enforced the rule, she's so into it, but that's only because she's so sick of the rule, you know. She wants to protect herself from being unpopular. I mean, she doesn't have Cindy's body. She could be bullied if she doesn't bully other people.
The basic fact of the school is it's almost half white and black. And so it almost seemed as though they're sort of parallel cliques in a way. Nobody really had the complete upper hand in the roost of the school, in a sense. I always thought that was kind of, if you're going to have cliques, that maybe that was a good thing, that you had different ways that people kind of showed off what they could do.
He's mainly like being picked on by various other kids just because he's like nerdy and smart. That's it, like that's all he's good at. And then like his arrogance, so he's like kind of antisocial as well. So he gets bullied by Shawhan, like who's like a punk rock kid, and like Coach Whitelaw, who's just like the PE coach, or like, and then like he beats him up sometimes. Yeah, he's just being bullied all the time. Just a poor Asian kid, I guess.
You know, there's going to be some kids who are kind of socially awkward, and there are going to be some mean kids who want to point out that those kids are socially awkward. That happened all the time. I mean, in 1,000 little ways and some big ways, like calling them names in front of other people, or making fun of them at parties.
He gets bullied though by Shawhan, who just thinks he's this total nerd who doesn't have any place hanging out with his cool friends. And then I think to a certain extent, Joey gets bullied by Coach Whitelaw, and a bunch of people just use him as they wish to achieve their own ends.
Just mean girls and notes and big fights, and you know, nobody would talk to you or nobody would talk to him, and lots of gossip and chatter, and then sort of public humiliation, also embarrassing you in class or putting things on your back, and you know, just sort of by the book, unimaginative bullying.
If there's a hierarchy of like bullying, like bottom being the nerds and top, like all the way at the very top, even like above principal and everything else, is Coach Whitelaw. Like he doesn't take orders essentially from anyone. He's more like the bullying dictator of sorts.
I mean, I think it's great that it's really becoming an issue that people are starting to talk about, but it's very complicated and it's not very cut and dry.
Right, right. Question I think that some teachers and adults in the community would ask would be, why do we see so much drug use in this play? What's the purpose of that? Couldn't you have done it without it?
Yes, it could have done it without it, but I don't think that would have been true to the time period and true to the way kids behaved when I was in high school.
I think that any of us from that time who've seen that, I mean, if we're honest, we're going to have to cop to the fact that we all tried that because that was what it was about. You know, that's what all the cool kids were doing. And the whole thing about the 80s was that there was a lot of pressurizing kids in high school to be cool, to fit in.
I think people drank a lot of alcohol, and then people smoked a lot of pot. But a working class town like Flint was all about beer. And you know, I had all these friends whose dads worked for GM on the line, and they all had kegerators.
She's stoned every scene that she's in. There's a bong with her. And she just adds a little bit of flavor that you wouldn't get.
I think it does a disservice to the play and to not kind of address that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, you know, I don't condone it. I don't think it's a really good thing for kids to be, you know, hitting bongs and things like that. But I do think that's kind of the reality.
He's sort of off in the clouds a lot because he smokes pot all the time. So he's off in the clouds, and he just wants, he's all about, I mean, this is the 80s. He's all about being sort of real into the moment. So he's trying to make the situation more real.
Well, there were drugs in the 80s. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody thought that marijuana was just like, that's just normal stuff. Everybody does that.
Ruben Cabajal definitely didn't hold back when he wrote Candy. She says a lot of things that you wouldn't really feel comfortable hearing all the time.
I think I went to one party, I think, in high school where there was like drinking, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit at the time.
At my high school, there's a lot of drug use also, because there was a segment of my school that was quite wealthy, and those people had access to like cocaine. That was at parties. It was not a surprise to me to walk into a party and see a bunch of kids, and there was a table and there's cocaine on the table.
I think it makes him, I think the drug thing makes him set back from everybody else. Although other people participate in drugs, he's the real druggie of the group. He's like the ultimate druggie. But coming from California and being into this whole scene sets him back, and he's able to look at this town in a way that none of the other people look at it. None of the other characters look at it.
So music was a really big deal when I was in high school growing up, and what kind of music you listened to was a big deal. Like I saw Run DMC when I was in 9th grade. It was their very first tour. I went down to Detroit to see him in Cobo Hall, which was a very unusual thing for a white kid to do. Like I think I was one of maybe 5 white people in the whole arena.
And there was kind of 2 different groups there too. There was the disco, you know, because that was kind of the disco time too in the early 80s, you know. And there's the people that liked the disco, and there's people that disco sucks, you know, and that was kind of a big, you know, they're more the hard rockers who openly
supported that kind of music. I mean, just
supported the rockers and really were you know, against the disco and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, music on the radio was a hugely important to all of us kids. It was really a big deal to my friends and me.
We were exposed to, you know, rock and roll and also cheesy 80s love ballads. That wasn't what I chose to play. Like I listened to the Grateful Dead and Joni Mitchell, but I think there was a real blend of what people were listening to at that time. Yaz. We had that sort of the beginning of electronic music was Yaz.
It seems to me that in the play, a really integral part of the play is the music that people listen to. And so I think that, you know, music is really central to the relationships between the characters, kind of setting the tone for what happens in the show. And so I think that's the main connection is with the music.
And so it seemed to me that if the 70s was about counterculture, 80s seemed to be more about conformity. It seemed like it was a more conservative counter swing to the sort of the freewheeling 70s.
people like wore concert T-shirts, and you know, it was more of a status thing.
Right. I went to that show.
I went to that show. Yeah. And
there was a lot of that. I mean, very, yeah, just your flag of participation in some concert or something like that.
And then also rap music kind of came on the scene in 1982, 1981. And that was a huge deal in a city like Flint, which was, at least in my neighborhood, a black neighborhood. So rap music was the first time you had popular music by black artists in my life.
The 80s was definitely a boom for electronic music, like the start of it. And you started to see your first DJs. Yeah, it was really analog synthesizers and weird singing and all that stuff.
Disco evolved into something that's a lot poppier, and
even the early techno, the second British invasion. You think of like the Pet Shop Boys and even U2 and some of that other stuff that was coming out about that time. It was really popular.
There's a sort of pushback against that. So when I was in high school, there was a lot of people who wear T-shirts that say "disco sucks" or something like that, or they'd make fun of different dance clubs where there was the British sort of new wave or something like that.
It's just funny looking back on it now. The music was so bad, in my 2012 opinion. Like 80s music should be banned forever.
Having a lot to do with music, I mean, the 80s was a big boom in music, and you see in this show there's a lot of going on about this whole radio love show. I mean, the play almost revolves around the information gained from it.
You used to call in and you could request songs, or they'd put you on the air, and that was fun. There were 2 main radio stations, CK 105, which was the classic rock station, and then WDZZ, which was the R&B soul. And people listened to the radio all the time. And then you'd have cassette tapes, you know, having tapes was a big deal. And you'd make tapes for each other, and that was, it was a huge deal if a boy made you a tape, you know. That was serious stuff. Yeah, I had a couple boys make me tapes.
The big thing was to have a Sony Walkman, which was to have a cassette tape player that you could carry with you and put on your... and some people even had portable CD players that they could play, but they were expensive. If you're really cool, you had a CD player in your car. But mostly it was a cassette tape player.
Walkman, sort of on the way to school, doing homework, you listen to your Walkman, you got your jean jacket on, got your jeans, maybe your tie-dye t-shirt, some aviators, you're still listening to your Walkman. Go to class, listening to your Walkman. It's like the only thing you do.
So did you sit down to write a high school play or a D&D play, or what was the...
What happened was, actually I wrote it as a response to 9/11. I know it sounds really strange, and it is kind of strange. But after 9/11, I kind of found myself in this, I was kind of more confused than I've ever been in my entire life. I think a lot of people are going through that. And I've been writing lots of dark, I mean, that's not my normal mode. I write these very kind of bleak plays. And I was like, you know what, I just want to make myself laugh. And this Gifted Program is still kind of a dark play, but I think I wrote it to cheer myself up. The idea of kindness and thinking about, and I feel like we're all more complicated than we allow ourselves to. You know, we go through our lives and we're busy, and it's really easy to walk past someone and not, you know, think about them as a fully three-dimensional person. And I think the more we can do that, the more we can like look at each other and think about why people behave the way they do, the better we'll all be. So it's interesting. So I mean, you know, sometimes the playwright doesn't know, doesn't have the answers either. You know.